All right, guys, we are going to start this out by talking about learning theory and markers, what they are and why we use them. First thing we want to talk about is the difference between reinforcers and punishers. Anytime we want to increase the frequency of a behavior, we must reinforce it. We have to pay them somehow for what they're doing for us. Just like we expect a paycheck at the end of the week or the end of the month, they expect a paycheck at some point during the session. When we have brand new dogs in training, we reinforce them, or we give those reinforcers super frequently. As they progress and become more mature in the training, we can start to give those less frequently. So examples of reinforcers would be food, toys, affection. Get to know your dog's currency. What do they like? What will they work for? What's their paycheck? So those are reinforcers. And again, we use reinforcers to increase the frequency of behaviors. On the opposite side of that, we have punishers. Anytime we want to decrease the frequency of a behavior, we must punish it. Don't get wrapped around the axle about the word punishment. Sometimes I know as humans that makes us feel a little bit icky, but if we think about it within the context of learning theory, we're just trying to decrease the frequency of a behavior. So a punisher can be a leash pop on a collar, it can be a cheek pinch, it could be a knee to the chest if the dog is jumping on us. Again, anything that we do to the dog that the dog thinks, I am less likely to do that behavior, those are our punishers. We'll get more in depth in this in a moment. Within our reinforcers and our punishers, we have positive and we have negative. It's not good or bad. Think addition or subtraction. So I feel like we've all heard this phrase, positive reinforcement, and we feel like we're familiar with it, but let's go ahead and define it. So positive reinforcement is the addition of something desirable to the dog to increase the frequency of a behavior. So, example, food, toy, affection. We're adding these things into our equation to increase the likelihood that the dog will do the behavior. So for example, if I tell my dog to sit, his rear end hits the ground, and then I mark it, which we'll talk about in a moment, but then I give him some food. So he thinks, wow, I heard this word or this sound, sit, I put my rear end on the ground, and then I got something I really liked. So I'm really likely going to do the thing when I hear that sound, in expectation of getting that reinforcer. Negative reinforcement is the removal or subtraction of an annoying stimulus in order to increase the frequency of a behavior. So it sounds a little confusing, but here's a human example. The seatbelt chime in our car. Super annoying, right? We all hate it. But it really gets us to put our seatbelt on. So here's the thing about the seatbelt chime. It's not scary, it's not painful, and we have the power and the knowledge on how to make it go away. We just plug in our seatbelt. So when we use negative reinforcement, we want to make sure of a couple things. One, the dog knows the task we are asking them to do. And two, we have taught them how to turn off negative reinforcement. So if we use the example of some collar pressure, I say sit, and the dog does not do the behavior. I can then give a little pressure in an upwards direction, and when the dog sits, that pressure goes away immediately. So the dogs understand that if they want to turn off this pressure, they just do what we're asking them to do. In this case, we're asking them to sit. We want to give negative reinforcement if we're using a leash and collar in the direction we want the dog to go. So if I'm asking him to sit, I want to give leash pressure straight up in the air. If I'm asking him to down, I want to give downward pressure towards the ground. If if I'm asking him to heel, either slow down or speed up, will give pressure in that direction, and so on and so forth with whatever behavior we're asking them to do. If we're using something like an e-collar or remote collar, we will continue to tap the button until the behavior is complete. So if I ask the dog to sit and the dog does not sit, I will start to give that tapping or the low-level stim, and I will repeat the task I'm wanting them to do. In this example, sit. So I will tap, sit, 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 and when the dog completes that behavior, that tapping stops immediately. They turn that off. Again, just like the seatbelt chime. All right, let's talk about positive punishment. Positive punishment is the addition of a temporarily aversive stimulus in order to decrease the frequency of a behavior. So a human example would be spanking a kid, giving them a little swat on their hand, and so forth. Now, I think we can all agree if we spank our children, our purpose is not to hurt or harm them. It's to deter them from the behavior that preceded that positive punishment. So, for a dog example, if my dog jumps on me and that is an unwanted behavior, I can give them the historical knee to the chest, and in hopes that that decreases the frequency of that behavior. Two things we want to see when we deliver positive punishment is, one, it stops the behavior in the moment, and two, we see a steady decline of that behavior over time. If we are not seeing either one of those things, that positive punishment may not be perceived as punishment to the dog, or it's not aversive enough to deter the dog from performing that behavior again and again. So you can get creative. When you deliver positive punishment, again, our purpose is not to harm our dog or to hurt them. So just get creative in how you deliver that, and you can experiment and see what really deters them from performing that unwanted behavior. Negative punishment is the removal of something desirable to the dog in order to decrease the frequency of a behavior. So a human example of negative punishment would be a timeout, or with children taking away screen time or TV time, anything like that. Now dogs, not all dogs can understand negative punishment, so you can experiment with your dog to see if negative punishment can work or will work for that dog. Again, just like positive punishment, the things we want to see with negative punishment is that it stops the behavior in the moment. So if you're taking something away, it probably will. But more importantly, when using negative punishment, do we see a steady decline of that behavior over time? If no, then maybe just put negative punishment to the side. That may not work for your particular dog. So let's talk about markers. A super common marker in dog training or animal training is a clicker. This is just an example of a clicker. Makes a little sound, just like that. So each marker, whether it's a clicker or a verbal marker, the purpose of markers is to mark the moment in time that the dog does the behavior we want them to do or that we don't want them to do. And each individual marker that we utilize communicates to the dog a different outcome. So, for example, if we're using verbal markers, the three most common verbal markers that we will use here are the word yes, the word good, and the word no. So markers in and of themselves put a little check mark in the dog's brain. That's what we wanted you to do, or that's what we don't want you to do. So, for example, for here, the word yes is our terminal marker. It marks the moment in time that the dog does the behavior we want them to do, and then it communicates to the dog, you're done, come to me for reinforcement. The word good marks the moment in time that the dog does the behavior we want them to do, and then it communicates to the dog, keep doing that behavior, reinforcement will come to you in position. Think of this as room service. When I say good, I will always bring the reinforcer to the dog, whether maybe if they're in position by my side or in front of me or somewhere in the distance, I will always go to them to give them that reinforcer. The word no is our negative marker. It will mean two things. One, stop what you're doing. So if my dog is jumping on me and I say no, and then they stop and sit very politely in front of me, I will mark that with a good or a yes. So if we agree that no means stop what you're doing, and if we agree that we must mark and reinforce behaviors we want to increase, we need to mark and reinforce that stopping behavior. So it sounds a little counterintuitive, but if you break it down, it makes sense. So again, in our example, the dog is jumping on me. This is an unwanted behavior. I say no. He stops immediately and sits down. Good, and I'll pay him for that, okay? If he does not stop jumping on me, then I can punish it. Whether I give him a knee to the chest or a little collar correction, it doesn't matter. But go ahead and punish that if he does not stop when you tell him no. The other thing no will mean is you did not do something quite right, try again. We want our dogs to problem solve on some level. So let's pretend I say sit and the dog lays down. They're incorrect, but let's give them a chance. So as they lay down, I say nope. And if they fix themselves immediately and go into a sit, yes, good job, buddy. I'm gonna have a big party with them because not only did they think, but they did. So we will really reinforce that. If they make a mistake, again, I've asked them to sit, but they lay down, I say nope. And they do not fix themselves, this is where I can give some negative reinforcement, right? So I can give a little bit of pressure. They sit, pressure comes off. I can say good, release them, and try that behavior again. Place. Yes. Place. Yes. Place. Good. 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 Yes. Sit. Yes. Sit. Yes. Sit. Yes. Sit. Good. 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 Yes. Very nice, buddy. Down. Yes. Very nice. Down. Yes. Down. Yes. Down. Good. 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 So let's talk about heel. Heel will mean two things. One is positional. So if I tell him to heel, I want him to come into this position of being on my left side. His shoulder is even with my leg. So this is heel position. Heeling is also walking by our side. And what I expect is that he's on my left side. His shoulder is even with my leg, just like the position, and that he is responsive to my speed and direction. So as I move out, heel, good boy. Good. And he should stop and sit when I stop. Be sure that you have some slack in your leash, but that it's not, we don't want your leash dragging on the ground, but we don't want a tight leash either. We don't want to force him to be in this position. We want him to think about where he needs to be. Heel. Good boy. Good. Heel. Good. Sit. Heel. Good. Sit. Heel. Good. Down. Good. So let's talk about the front position. This position is to allow you to have some space between yourself and people that may be in front of you. So this is the general position we want him in. He can either sit or down. He can lay down in the front position also. Again, this is it, you know, if you're standing in line or you're out in a crowd and you just need some space in front of you, this will be the position that he goes to. This is how we get into it. Front. Good. From here, you can call him back into heel position. Heel. Good boy, buddy. Sit. This will be our rear position. This is to give you space behind you. We do want him either directly behind you like this. He can also be in this position behind you more at this angle. That's fine. Again, you can also down, tell him to down behind you to give you space. This is how you will get him into the rear position. For me, when I ask him to do it, I will put my hand here almost as a little touch for him to be able to find that position more readily. It'll look like this. Rear. Good. Down. Good. Again, we can get right back into heel position from here. Heel. Good boy. Very nice, buddy. Good job. So let's talk about behavioral interruptions. The cue for him to do the behavioral interruptions for you will be one of three things. One, fidgeting with your fingers. Two, running your fingers through your hair. And three, grasping at your throat. You will have to practice these extensively because how you fidget with your fingers, run your fingers through your hair, and grasp at your throat when you're feeling anxious will be different from how I do it. So we'll talk about this in our session, but just know that his cue to do the behavioral interruption is the word touch. I'm going to show you a couple reps of what the expectation is, and then I will do the anxiety behaviors and also add the word touch so you can see how you will practice this until it becomes second nature for him, responding to how you do it. Touch. Yes. 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 Very nice. Touch. Yes. Here's how they look without me telling him to touch. Yes. 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 Nice, buddy. So one of the other tasks he will do, say you go to a restaurant or you are sitting down somewhere or you just need to kind of get him out of the way, the cue for that will be the word tuck. My expectation is I will always help him get into the tuck position because it may be different every time. It's going to be very contextual, but he understands the concept that tuck means get into this small space. You will just help him on how to do it. So for example, if I need him to come under a chair, tuck. And then he should just lay there until you tell him to do something else. That something else could be coming back into a heel position even though you're seated. Heel. Good. Heel. Say you don't have a space underneath your chair, maybe it's a solid object. You can also have him tuck under your legs. Tuck. Good. Again, he should remain in this position. All right, so one of the other exercises that you will do is what's called deep pressure therapy. This is when he will come across your lap and just put his full weight on you. He will be in the down position and the cue will be lap. So whether he's on either side of you, if you're sitting in a chair or if you're sitting on the ground or on the bed or whatever the situation is, you'll just tell him lap, he'll come across, lay on you, and then you can pet him. And the purpose of this is to really help you decompress. It's kind of like having a weighted blanket on you. So this will be something that you can practice with and fiddle with and see if it helps you. If it does, awesome, use it. If not, don't use it. Lap. Good. Good. Yes. Lap. Good.
clap. Good.